Welcome to Amy Learns to Cook. I'm kind of excited today because I've never done a sous vide cook before, and the nice people at CISNO sent us an immersion circulator, which is going to allow water to heat up to a certain temperature that you set it to. So it's really highly precise cooking, and you can let it cook almost as long as you want within limits. And most people can use it for steaks and they come out nice and rare or medium rare without running the risk of being dry and stuff. Except today I'm going to do a test and review, except I'm going to make it a little harder. We're doing a chuck roast. It's a really nice piece of meat. It does have a lot of connective tissue, so it's got to break that down. But I've never done one like this where I've tried to cook it to a medium rare, like a steak and stuff. I mean, a roast, I usually cook it well done when I'm doing stew or chili or something. I've never had success. I did one on a grill one time and it came out tough. So today, let's do a test and review of the CISNO Immersion Circulator, do some sous vide cooking on a chuck roast, and I'm going to finish it off with a pan sauce that has mushroom, onion, and just lots of great flavors. So this is the CISNO Sous Vide. Amy did a kind of like an unboxing during one of her What's Up Wednesday episodes. We'll put a link to that below, but this is just a really quick version right here. So if you look at the box here, they got a picture of the sous vide in action there. It's got, a pan of water, some veggies, some meat. Looks kind of pretty. It's simple, right? How these things work. We'll show you all that here. They got some chicken, pork, beef, vegetables right there. And on here, it shows that it's 1,000 watts. It'll do a temperature range of 0 to 95 degrees centigrade or 32 to 203 Fahrenheit. It's accurate within a 0.1 of a degree Fahrenheit or centigrade. And it sounds like it's pretty simple, right? So one of the things with sous vide is that with normal high temperature cooking, it's easy to burn things or leave it on the grill or in the oven or on a fry pan just a little too long, and it can ruin things. With meat, these things are capable of giving you pink meat from one edge to the other with, of course, we're going to do a pan sear at the end to give it a little color and flavor and stuff. But these things are wonderful, and you can cook eggs and make them all creamy and stuff that you might not get when you're boiling them. So these things are really exciting. And today I decided to do a little bit of a test. Most people might just do a steak. I'm doing a roast. I don't know if that was a wise choice, and based on the size of it, it might not be, but it should be a good test. If this thing can cook a roast and make it a nice, happy, medium rare without it being too bloody or too overcooked, make it what we want it to be, at least what I want it to be, then that'd be great. So let's get started. All right, now we're gonna start having some fun here. This is about 2.5 pounds, and I'm gonna show you the raw picture from last night. I mean, if I'm gonna do, prime rib, that can cost lots of money. But yet this cut here is relatively cheap, but yet has a lot of good fat in it. But as I am finding out, of course, chuck has a lot of connective tissue. It's something that usually takes hours to cook unless you do it in a pressure cooker, right? Low and slow. It's great for doing stews and chili and stuff. Slow cookers can cook it in hours. So what makes you think sous vide can do it in an hour or two? It won't. Okay. A quick test on the sous vide would have been to just do a steak. I could be done in an hour or two depending upon how big the steak is. So this is a really good test here. I've put some coarse pepper, salt, kosher salt, and some granulated garlic on it and let it sit in the fridge overnight. And by now, of course, it's been a good 24 hours actually. So it's had a chance to really commingle in there. I'm not going to add any oils, butter. I could add thyme or other herbs to there, but there's a chance that with beef, some of the oils would maybe dilute the beef flavor. We will use butter in my finishing sauce later. You can either sear your meat before or after. If you want to sear it up front, It'll help kill some of the surface bacteria, but then you got to do maybe an ice water bath to chill the surface, and then you can throw it in the Ziploc bag and then sous vide it. Or if you do what I'm going to do, we're going to do it at the end. The meat's going to come out looking gray, but the searing will give it color, give it flavor, give it crust, and then when we cut open, hopefully it'll be nice and pink of a medium rare, which is what I'm shooting for. So without further ado, this is a 16-quart all-clad pot. Why so big? Well, because my meat is kind of big and I want it to hang, and I'm going to show you here. A lot of our smaller things, such as this here, is just flat out too small. The bag doesn't really fit all that well. I mean, it kind of fits, but it's barely. And same thing with a lot of our other pots. So that was out of it. But for smaller things like steaks, something like this would be great. Or the more square looking ones. If you've seen Amy's flour containers, her all-purpose flour and her bread flour, they're in like 6 or 8 cup containers that are square, plastic. Those are perfect for these things. You can clip these things in. We can use food saver bags, or we can use the water displacement idea, which is cheaper. I'm using glass Ziploc bag. Without further ado, what I'm going to do here is drop this guy in here till it's submerged, right? And that's going to get out a lot of the air till it's kind of near the surface. In fact, what I'm going to do here is get it mostly, what, maybe an inch or so, right? Then we'll dunk that under. I mean, as long as you force most of the air, you just don't want this thing to float. Some people talk about if you're using herbs that you might have to put some oil in there because the herbs might cause the bag to float, and oil, I don't know, hold it down like an anchor. I don't know. Haven't tried it. I'm not doing that. I'm not adding oil or butter because it may dilute the beef flavor, even though it may add and give myself some really good beefy juices. I don't want to dilute the beef flavor from the meat. I am adding a sauce, so that's going to figure into the whole flavor profile. So if you want to add butter or some sort of oil, do it sparingly. If you're going to be doing fish or something else that might stick to the plastic, then some people do recommend adding an oil, but just do very little. In my case, I got a big hunk of meat. It's not going to stick to the plastic. I can rip it out, but something more tender, maybe oil would be a good idea. Let's go ahead and put this guy sideways here. I've got this bag, first of all, we can, I don't know, maybe put this guy over the edge here just to make sure we don't have any issues. The bag is sealed, right? We don't really seem to have any air in there. I'm going to hold it over the side. We're going to put a clip here. Any kind of a clip helps, like that. Seal the bag on the outside. That way I don't have to worry about any of the water potentially getting into where my meat is. The clip, of course, hold it there. Why do we clip to the side versus just let it float on the bottom? This helps with circulation. Our immersion circulator is going to be kind of like a sauna, jacuzzi, whatever you want to call it, spinning water around. And if it just lays on the bottom, we're not sure the meat's going to get even heat and water on all sides. By letting it kind of float, it'll do a better job. The clip, of course, helps hold it in there. Now that we've got this to the point where we know we're not going to overfill it, you know, it's kind of like putting a frozen turkey into a big old deep fryer during Thanksgiving. You don't fill it full of oil, put the turkey in there, then boom, things blow up. Well, I don't want to do the same thing with water. Okay, the immersion circulator has this, what do you want to call this here? It kind of has a clamp action there. It's like a silicone right there. It also has silicone here, so it won't hurt whatever container you're putting that on. It also has a kind of like a minimum and a maximum water line. So if you can see this, that's where you want your water at all times. Depending upon your cook times, if you're doing big roasts or any kind of crazy stuff that might be cooking for 24 hours, 48, 72 hours, you may have to add water from time to time. You need to maintain it in that level. Yeah, we're just going to go ahead and dunk that in there. Seems okay. And we just need to make sure that we have it set so we can keep the meat covered. Okay, we are at the maximum line right there. So we're right maybe an inch or so above where the meat is, where the very top of it is, so that's good. So we have room, and then we still got maybe a couple of inches before we hit the top of the pan. So it depends on how violent this guy is going to be, right? So we're going to go ahead and turn this on in just a second. Cook times and temperatures. The owner's manual here is relatively simple. It shows you some safety precautions, some operating instructions. More importantly, it shows you how to turn it on, change the times and temperatures and stuff. Control panel that kind of explains all that stuff for you. Operating, basically, different things, how to clean it, maintenance stuff. There's no cooking times or temperatures provided. So in that sense, it's not helpful, but there's a lot of information on the web. Perhaps their website might have some information. I know they sell on Amazon, but I don't know if they have a corporate website. I haven't researched that. There are many resources for cooking times and things. It depends, you know, do you want it medium rare, well done, medium well? What kind of meat? What are you cooking? How big is it? Just different things have different times. In this case, a roast may cook different times and temps than something else. Now I want medium, I don't want bloody rare. That's what I definitely don't want. So I want it to be kind of a medium, so a little warmer pink than bloody red. And I want it to be juicy. I want it to be tender and juicy. So that's my goal here. And this guy can do it for me. He's not going to do it for me in 1 or 2 hours. If I want to do a steak, it can. A roast, it won't, especially chuck. Chucks are tough. They got connective tissues, muscles, all kinds of stuff. So it needs time to break a lot of stuff down. So if it was a tender roast, if it was prime rib or something like that, or ribeye, something exciting that's already softer, then it'd be less cook time to cook things. You're just bringing it up to temperature. Here, I got to bring up the temperature and I got to break things down. So since I want this to cook at a lower temperature, I'm going to try, you know, it's everybody, steakhouses and everybody love lower temperatures than what you think, right? So if I say 135 or 140 based on the USDA, everybody says, oh, that's a medium or medium rare or medium well or some crazy stuff. Everybody wants to drop down 5 or 10 degrees. So it's really up to you based on your preferences. 131 to 135 is probably an okay range, and that would be the finishing temperature when this thing is done. No matter if I cook it for 10 hours, 20 hours, or 80 hours, it's going to have that temperature. It's just a matter of what's the texture going to be and is it going to dry out? And the answer is it can dry out. You don't want to cook it for 3 days, I'll tell you that. In this case here, we're going to shoot for 24 hours, and I'm probably going to go ahead and cook it at 135 degrees. Cooking is a science. When the meat is done, it's done. I can't tell you. This thing is about 2 inches thick on the thick end and 1 3/4 inches thick on the other end, and it's maybe 2.5 pounds. So it's not a 5-pound roast, and it's not 8 inches thick, but it is thick enough that it's going to take a little while to cook. So that's what we're going to shoot for. Let's go ahead and plug this baby in. The water temperature is somewhere around 115 degrees. We'll see what this bad boy does. Okay, the current water temperature is 108 degrees. Let's turn this on. Just hold it for 1 second. And now it's on. It keeps track of how long it's been cooking or the working time. It's got a set temperature of 131, which is pretty close to what I want. I don't know if it's... Okay, I hit the setup button. I'm going to bump this up to 135. We'll see what that does. We're going to hit the setup button again. Working time. Set this thing for 24. I'm just holding it down. There we go. I hit setup again. Okay, I'm guessing that's done. So I'm standing, I'm going to put my mic here, maybe a foot from the immersion circulator, as this is called. Notice how quiet it is? You can see there's a light from the ceiling reflecting in the water kind of near the immersion circulator, and it's just barely shaking. And I assume that's by design. You don't want this to be a massive, I don't know, hot tub with bubbles, Godzilla-like, because that could disturb things, especially if you got, I don't know, gentle meat and stuff like fish. You probably don't want that flapping all over the place. So that was one of my concerns, is my meat, is it going to float? No, it's sunk and it's immersed in the water. That's good. And this thing is just stirring the water up, which is good because you need the water to circulate, right? We don't want a little hot spot by where the appliance is, and then everything else is cold, right? So it's doing a good job. So I have a set temp of 135. It's at 114, so it's just letting me know. It looks like once it comes up to temperature, then it's going to be doing a countdown. Good morning! It is now 27 hours later. The temperature thing here shows that we've been maintaining 134, 135 degrees now for 21 hours. In reality, it's actually 27 hours. We did have one minor goof, which is my fault, and I'm going to show that to you in a moment. But we are ready to pull this bad boy out. So let's be safe so we don't get burnt. This thing is very hot. It's 135 degrees and it's big. So let's get at it. So you might be wondering why I got all this plastic and stuff before I take this apart, and what's up with these tongs and stuff. So first of all, I've been cooking at a relatively low temperature, about 135 degrees here. So it's not a ton of steam being released, where maybe if I was cooking at a higher temperature, like say 170 or, you know, I don't know, somewhere in the middle, maybe there'd be a little more steam produced. But because so much of this cooking time was unmonitored at all, I didn't want to lose enough water that this thing shuts down on low water level, because it would, right? So some recommendations when you're doing sous vide is to put saran wrap or something loosely over your cooking vessel, so that way to limit the evaporation loss. In 27 hours of cooking, I put 2 cups of water. I started out with 10 cups of water. It went down a little bit. 2 cups is not much. So this part worked fine. You can see that my bag here, let's go ahead. Here's my meat. It's showing somewhat brown, which is not normal for sous vide. It's normally going to come out gray and bland and boring, but that's probably because I put so much seasonings on there and it had kind of turned the meat a little brown. We're going to be doing a sear or browning or whatever in a few minutes here. A little bit of fun we had, and I'm going to turn this off now because I don't need it on anymore. So let's just hit the power button here. I'm going to hold it and off we go. I think it's off. I'm going to unplug it. The CISNO Immersion Circulator did a wonderful job. I mean, it's been running for 27 hours, a little asterisk by that. The problem I had with this particular cook, besides it being big, right? I mean, I got a roast, I got a big pot here, is we had a few constraints. The bag had to be submerged, but I had to keep this part above. Otherwise, I could have just maybe laid this down on the bottom. I could use a smaller vessel. The CISNO has a limit of this much water level you need to stay in the thing, and I'm going to show that once again. This little cross member probably would be more secure if this was resting on the lid of your cooking vessel, whether you're using a plastic container or a pot or something. It slid a little bit during my cooking time, and that can be disastrous if you're not paying attention. So I used the tongs to give me this gap here. You see this right here? This is our low water, this is our high water. If this thing slides down and the water level gets above here, it will shut down. And I think that's what happened some point 20 something hours ago. This was cooking for a couple hours, life was good. I took a short nap, woke up, and it was off, and the water temperature dropped about 10 degrees. And I was like, oops, what happened here? And all I could do was just hit the reset button and turn it back on and worry what happened. So I took a little water out, I put the tongs in there and did it. If you can somehow get this thing on here to rest by weight, you won't have any problem. I had also noticed that it was leaning a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. Now, that could be caused by my pan. I'm not going to hold that against CISNO. I think the CISNO actually did a wonderful job. It probably beeped and made noise. That's what it does. I did a test before I really even used this thing, was what happened if I put too much water in here. And it beeped and it shuts off. So I know what they say in the manual does actually work. But in reality, if you're not monitoring, if you're not watching TV, you're nearby, you don't hear the thing beeping because maybe you're sound asleep upstairs like me, then there can be a problem and it'll shut down. So because of that, I gave it a couple extra hours cooking time just to make up for that. Might not have been necessary, especially with this long of a cook. A couple hours probably doesn't matter much. This clamp does do a good job in general. It does hold it in place, but it can slide on you. Right this second, it's not going to slide, but over the course of a couple hours, it can. So my big suggestion is never fill the water level up to here, knowing that it might slide on you. Always keep it in the middle. The owner's manual is very simple. Keep it in there somewhere, in that range. And they're right, it worked. For 21 hours straight, this thing was working fine on its own once I had the water level adjusted right. This is hot, so treat it with respect. I'm just going to drain a little bit of water out. And I'm going to go ahead and put it over here. And then let's get this out of the way. Okay, we just took the meat out of the immersion circulator just a moment ago. I'm going to go ahead and take the meat out of the bag here. I'm going to probe it really quick here, just to see what it's showing here. And it is showing 138 on my Thermopin. Probe it again here, just for the giggles. 138, 139. Okay, and that could be resting. Sometimes that comes up, right? So I give the CISNO Immersion Circulator a double thumbs up. It brought my meat up to 139, which is in the ballpark what I wanted. I set for 135, but I'm happy with 139. I trust my Thermopin. I've used it for many, many years. So the CISNO Immersion Circulator did its job. I'm happy. Great with that. Now on with the meat here. We have to dry the meat out. I'm going to chill it for just a little bit, so we'll let it rest. I'm going to actually throw it in the refrigerator for just a few minutes. I want to get the surface nice and dry so we can get a nice brown on it, on the surface, and that'll be very tasty. Okay, the steak has been resting for about 10 minutes. The surface is nice and dry, which is good. That way we can brown and not have to worry about evaporating any juices or anything off there. We're gonna just melt a little bit of butter real quick. All right, let's go ahead and get this bad boy on here. We got a little butter in the pan. It's nice and hot. And normally you're just going to brown it on each side for about a minute. Because I put this in the refrigerator and cool down a little bit, we're going to actually get a 2-minute crust on each side. Okay, we're going to take it off now and tin it in foil. We're going to let this rest for maybe 10 minutes or so while we create our pan sauce. Okay, we are going to make a pan sauce. I'm going to use some wine. You can omit the wine if you want and just use water or just beef broth by itself, but I'm going to use a combination of wine, which I'm going to reduce for extra flavor, along with about a half a cup of broth that we have from the juices from the beef. So first thing I do is I got my pan. If I had shallots handy, I could go ahead and brown them with a little bit of butter, and that would add a lot of flavor. But instead, I'm going to use some dry shallots. I use Penzeys Sunny Paris, which has shallots and a few other nice spices in it. I also like Mrs. Dash, which has pepper and a few other nice spices, so I combined the two. So we'll add that in just a moment. But for right now, we're just going to do the wine reduction. The pan is kind of a medium-low. It's not really on high. And we have a little bit of the butter from the beef when we browned it, and we also have the bits. So we're going to deglaze the pan with that. And it's only going to take a few minutes. This is only about a half a cup of wine. My wine reduction is almost to where I want it to be. You can kind of see that as I pull this across, it's kind of slow to go. I'm going to do it a little bit more, but what I wanted to add in the meantime is a few things for flavor. So this is my Sunny Paris and Miss Dash combination. It's about a teaspoon of each. I'm just going to go ahead and get those guys in there. I want them to kind of get incorporated. So all the steam from the wine, which was smelling pretty good on its own, now I've got all that shalloty and pepper and stuff that's in there. I'm getting some of those aromas. Okay, we're going to go ahead and add some more stuff here. I'm going to go ahead and add my drippings. I have about 2/3 of a cup of from the pan there, or from the bag from my juices. So that's just, and that's also got some of the spices you can kind of see that washed off the meat, so that's going to add to it. We're going to add about a teaspoon of Dijon mustard. Doesn't have to be exact. This is just another layer of flavor. I also have a tablespoon of some Worcestershire sauce. Worcester sauce. For those that hate to pronounce that word. Just going to go ahead and mix that in. And then lastly, we're going to melt some butter. I'm going to put about 3 tablespoons in here. One of the things when you're doing a pan sauce is when you're reducing your wine and you have butter in there, if the water content, if I'm speaking this right, gets too low, it can break, and I don't know, it takes on like a oil slick look to it, and it's just nasty instead of being a nice, shiny, beautiful consistency. So commonly you just have to add water. Well, in this case, before that happened, I added my beef juices, so that, and plus, you know, Worcester and all that stuff too. So I'm just adding some butter here. We're going to just let this melt, heat up, and we'll be ready in just a moment. I've got some mushrooms and onions that I sauteed a little while ago. What I've purposely done in the cooking here, was try not to over salt anything. Initially, the beef, we salted heavily with coarse kosher salt because it is a big piece of meat. I didn't have to really worry about that. And because it sat for 24 hours with garlic, salt, and some coarse pepper on there, I wasn't really worried that the meat wouldn't be flavored. We just want the sauce to have some flavor. I'm not going with unsalted butter. This is salted butter, which is pretty common, right? So when we do eat the beef, it'll be seasoned to taste. So it's pretty tasty. We got the acidity of the wine, and then a lot of beef flavor, which is good because we haven't watered it down. I'm probably gonna add just a little salt to it. So I'm just gonna add a couple of pinches to this. The last thing I wanna hear is somebody say the sauce ruined their meat, or the meat ruined their sauce. Here. Just gonna get that in there. Take another sample here. That's really good. Add just enough salt to wake things up a little more. So we're really good. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this off, and we're gonna get eaten pretty soon here. All right, so this is one of the moments we've been waiting for, right? So we've cooked this thing for hours and hours, and now it's time to slice it up and see what it actually looks like. First thing I want to do is, the grain in this piece is clearly going this way, so we're just going to go ahead and cut it at a slight angle here. And of course it's oops, got that guy a little thick. It's slicing really easy. The meat feels really tender. We'll find out when I eat it, right? It looks reasonably juicy. I mean, I'm able to push. We actually got a little juice there and stuff. All right. So you can see here that we have very nice, evenly cooked pink meat. It's kind of like a rose color pink, so it's not very bright red, but it's also not horrible either. So I don't know. I'm sure steak experts would probably call this like a medium or something like that. I like what I call medium rare, which, you know, has some pink in the middle, but you'll kind of see we have the clear crust or brown on the surface here and a little here. There's not much, if any, gray under it on either side. And that's something that sous vide does for you, is when you cook at a higher temperature, you'll have gray where the higher heat kind of not overcooks it, but it's higher than what the middle is. That's why you have some pink in the middle. If it's medium or medium rare, the pink is bigger, or rare even has more. And you always have a certain amount of gray, and sometimes the meat actually shrinks as it's given up water. This is really nice. In fact, we can just squeeze that right there, and it still has juice. I mean, my hand's all nice and juicy here. So this is just incredible. I sliced up some of this stuff, and it looks really great. So we have just the brown, and then we have the pink. So without further ado, let's plate this up and see what it tastes like. All right, so here's the moment we've been waiting for. Well, we've had a couple of moments. One was, is the immersion circulator gonna work? Yes. Is it gonna cook the meat? Yes. Is it gonna make it pink everywhere like promised? Yes. What's the meat going to taste like? That's the only part we don't have yet. So we're going to do that right now. But I'll tell you the truth. Disclaimer, I already taste tested the meat by itself without the sauce. It doesn't really need the sauce. The sauce is just extra flavor. But I'll do it officially here. As you know, I have a butter knife here for a reason. You don't need a steak knife. Yes, this is chuck roast. I'm going to cut it with a butter knife. So let's take a couple pieces here because, oops. That's what I want to do. So first of all here, we just like that. It cuts it. It just kind of falls apart. But here's a piece. So it's just a little chewy. Obviously it's not going to fall apart on my tongue and just dissolve away, but it doesn't really require much chewing at all though. The meat, I seasoned it, like I said, heavily with kosher salt, coarse black pepper, and granulated garlic. And I let it sit on the surface of the meat in the bag for 24 hours in the fridge. Then it cooked with all that intact for another 24 hours. So believe me, the flavor is in the meat. It's not just on the surface. The sauce is just gonna kick it up a notch here a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. This is mushroom with a little bit of onions, and it's wine, butter, and extra spices on it. And let's go ahead. So you got the flavor of the meat, obviously, and then you got the wine, which is not, too acidic tasting, and then just all the flavors kind of just hit you. I know it's really hard to describe this to you, but you've got the beefy meat and then a really nice wine sauce that just adds another flavor to it. We didn't really caramelize anything, so I don't have anything that's caramelized / burnt tasting or anything in here at all. It's just really good flavors that come together. I really like this. I got Amy up. She took some really nice pictures for us, so you'll see that just in a moment. But this is really what it is. It's really good. This video is basically going to do two things here. One, it's my first try ever doing sous vide. Amy asked, so how did it turn out? I said, sous vide all the way. She's like, oh God. And it's true. This thing turned out wonderful. Is it overcooked? Is it dried out? Any of that stuff? I'd say no. Could I cook it a few hours less? Did I have to cook it 24 hours? Maybe not. This was a pretty good piece of meat, even though it is chuck. Could I have cooked it for 6 hours? Probably not. It probably would have been tough. It needed time to tenderize and break down. So I just want to say thank you, CISNO, for providing us with the Immersion Circulator. It did a great job. It provided us the opportunity to do this and show everyone how sous vide works. It luckily turned out. I mean, I've never done this before, believe me. Thumbs up. If you like this video, please subscribe and comment below. Give us a thumbs up. And visit our website at amylearnstocook.com. We're on Facebook at Facebook/group/Amy Learns to Cook. People talking all the time about stuff. It's lots of fun there. We're on Pinterest, and I'm not sure what the other links are right now. It's kind of late. But Amy will have the links all below. And I think we're on Instagram at Cooking with Amy. So I hope you guys, if you have one of these, give this a try. It's really great. I fully recommend it.